everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. We're back again today for another episode. We're here. I'll fight for you, but you got to fight for yourself too. I got somebody who's in the good fight daily. I got this good brother here who was recently ordained with his title, his new title. So we got to put some respect on his name, Dr. Ray Ankrum. This brother is a longtime educator who's going to tell us a little bit about himself in a second. Definitely somebody to learn from, listen from, and we're going to dig in. We want to hear his gut of the greatness story because he wasn't always the good doctor. He was little Ray Ray from the block before that. So we're gonna talk about Ray Ray and them today, and we're going to get to know this brother's story and why is he fighting so hard for others? Because I'm sure somebody helped fight for him. And so, without further ado, I'm going to introduce Dr. Ray Ankrum, but Ray, or is it Dr. Ankrum? But he just likes to be called that. So, hey, Ray, if you could, man, could you tell everybody a little bit about what you're doing and why should anybody care? That's the first question I ask. Why does anybody give a shit? Like, why does anybody care?
Absolutely, bro. I appreciate you, man. Dr. Paul Miller in the building. So I'm Ray Ankrum. I'm superintendent of Riverhead Charter School located out on Long Island. Decent school. We outperform the 17 districts that send us their kids. And so, daily we're out here doing the work. 85 to 90% of our students identify as Black and brown, and yet they outperform their peers, right? And they do this because we love them, we give them structure, and we put them on a pathway to greatness. This year we have 13 seniors. This is our first senior class this year, so we got 13 scholars that are graduating this year. All 4 have been accepted into 4-year institutions, and about 8 or 9 out of those 13 are going to be going to R1 universities, right? So Research 1 universities. So we out here doing what we got to do. And you said, why should anybody listen? Man, listen. So, when you listen to folks that are doing the work, and you listen not to respond, but to actually, hear what folks are saying, it can move mountains for you, right?
Well, definitely rude to the good bros. I gotta give it to
and the building.
Yes, sir. Okay. For all the bros out there listening, the bros are doing good things throughout this world, throughout the community. Scholarship is definitely one of our key principles, right? So what did Ricky Smiley say? What was his?
I think he said manship, bro. He said manship.
He said manship. The bros didn't like that too much.
No.
He said he was under a lot of pressure and stress, and he just kind of forgot the 4 cardinal.
I'm never gonna forget that, man. If you had to work hard for it, you ain't never gonna forget it.
Yeah, but God bless the brother. I hope that he's okay and not under as much stress and pressure that he is currently facing. But I say all that, man, to say congratulations, man. Just so people in the non-educational world understand is that you guys grew out and you grew into what grades did the school start with? Because you guys grew into having seniors and having high school age kids.
Sure. So our school started in 2001. So it's a 23-year-old charter school, right? That's one of the oldest in the state. We started as a K-5. I got here in 2012, and by parent demand, we expanded to K-8, and then by more parent demand, we decided to expand to K-12. And so right now we are a K-12 only K-12 system out in Suffolk. And bro, we're just putting in the work, man. Like the charter school mantra, and I hate it, is that you got to do more with less, right? And part of that philosophy is, you got districts that money is coming from because the money is supposed to follow the child, but yet there's administration fees on top of that happen prior to money even coming to you, right? And so if, for example, you're getting 18,000 per pupil, you only see about 14,000 because of the administrative fees that districts put on top of whatever, right?
Right.
And so for us to have these outcomes, doing more with less, man, I would shout that from the rooftops, man. Like, yes.
Oh, absolutely. Somebody who wasn't too bright suggested when they made charter schools, probably to politically get them passed, that we'll do more with less. And I think they were the dumbest people I've ever met, because it makes things unnecessarily difficult and harder. But what it does make is you creative on how and where to spend your money accurately, and to put it towards the best things that you need, to get the results that you need. So for the fact that you're doing that, man, and what people need to understand is that I heard you say by parent demand, and that people wanted this option for their kids because the other options weren't as good for their kids. And so the fact that you're doing this, you're rewriting the narrative for kids. You're changing their academic and educational futures. And that's one of the things that I loved about being an academic or educational leader, because we have the opportunity to affect kids by putting the right schools, the right systems in place, and making sure that they get what they need when other schools aren't, man. So just congratulations. And I love it. And I know, if I'm not mistaken, out there in Long Island, you guys don't get facility aid either, way there are other New York.
Absolute none. Right, we're in a fight for our lives right now, bruh. We so our high school, we had renovated in a historic building that used to be a school, like back circa like 1920s, right? And so we renovated this place, and it's like a world class space for learning, but it only houses about maybe 150 to 170 students, right? And so our students are walking out in the back and having to be innovative in terms of us giving them gym, because we don't have a gym in this facility, right?
Right.
And so, for us, we're like, hey, listen, we can we budget really well, and we were able to come up with some formulas in order for us to have an endowment so that we can go out and purchase land and build our own high school. And bruh, it's been so hostile out here for us to acquire land in terms of the land restriction uses and like all these other things, man. It's like, if it's not one thing, it's another. And so I'm just hoping, by the grace of God, that we're able to get a facility for these kids so that they can do what they need to do.
See, part of my problem with this, Ray, is that what really baffles me is that our legislatures, most of them either don't understand the purpose of what the charter schools are doing, or the ones that do don't care in so many aspects of it. And when I say that, meaning that there's some legislators that I've even spoke to, actually even some of our mutual friends, and let's say, that I have spoken with, who are in the political arena, and when I speak to them, they didn't understand, but then once they did, they have alluded to that they're going to vote where their voter constituency is at. And so if their voter constituency is deep niched in unions, and that they're going to vote that way, even if the education that's getting provided for the kids isn't good. Like in Rochester, where I'm at, it's 646 out of 646 of school districts. The education, 646 out of 646. It's bad, bro. It's
terrible. You're understating that. That is terrible.
And so when that is said, and there's options where that are completely outperforming and doing well, and some of them we have a few schools that are some of the best in the state that are charter schools in Rochester here. And when you can't recognize that because your political vote, that's sad, especially when you grew up and you look like me and you. And you grew up in this environment, and you want a choice whether you sit on the front of the bus or the back of the bus, but you don't but you don't want your kids to have a choice where they go to school. Like,
of course.
It baffles me. And you know what? So we are taking on some lobbying. We are taking on some potential. If the lobbying doesn't work, we are going to take on a lawsuit for equitable funding. So when it's time, I'm gonna lock you in, because we're all the areas that are experiencing these problems. We're going to be communicating this to some of the powers that be.
I think one of the things that we miss, right, and that we don't talk enough about, is that parents from charter schools vote too. And so when you have a large charter school, like I got 900 students, right? So I got 900 students, and we're assuming the best that all these kids are in 2-parent households, right? That's almost 2,000 voters, right? And so that's a voting block that can change the dynamics of an election, right? Especially state and local level, right? And so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to empower these parents to understand the power of the vote, and that they can sway things if they're out and they're active and they're visible and they're being loud, like how other people are loud, right? And
Right.
so, those are the things that we got to think about.
Speaking of that, we're starting the organization I run. We're starting a parent advocacy group for that exact purpose, and so I think there's some opportunity there to potentially tap on your expertise. And because now, what was your research again?
My research was parent engagement in urban charter schools
Oh,
through the lens
okay.
of Black male school leaders. Thanks for that plug, team. I appreciate you.
Yes, sir. So, we're gonna, I'm gonna, now that I got you on video and on record, I'm gonna record us saying that I'm gonna tap into you and look for some conversation or some support around that, as we're having our first advocacy meeting coming up in a few weeks. And we're looking to the charter schools to build a network of parents to advocate for this region here, but really to help change that voice. Because, like you said, if we can get these parents to assemble and advocate and move the needle, where some of their voices, 2,000 votes when there's only 3,500 people going out,
Absolutely,
it
100%.
makes a big deal, right? So
Yes,
we're
sir.
trying to, and we have the power here. Between the 26 schools, we have 8,500 kids. So we have
Wow.
8,500 kids. So, if I can get these parents to come out and speak in voice, some of these people that were talking about their voter constituencies is going to change. And so,
100%.
I could definitely use some of your thoughts and processes on that. But as I go about this, you weren't always Dr. Raymond Ankrum.
Absolutely not.
So, as I say that, tell us a little bit about your gutter to greatness, and don't leave stuff out, man. Where did it all start? Where you from? How'd you grow up? What it looked like?
Yeah.
And also, I always preface with, gutter doesn't always mean that you lived in the gutter. It might have even been your mentality. So you might have grew up beautifully in a loving, amazing household, but you decided to have a mentality in your mind that created you all kinds of issues, and you had to find a way to get through it. Or you might have grew up in the slums too, like I did. So and I had both problems. So at the end of the day, tell us about your gutter to greatness, man.
Sure. So I grew up with both mindsets, right? So, man, so I'm using this as therapy, right? Because a lot of us don't really talk about these thoughts and these things, right? Like we suppress these thoughts, and we don't really have opportunities unless you actually go to a therapist and you're like working on yourself or whatever, right? So I'm using you today, team. So
Please.
for me, started at about 9 years old. My grandmother died, and prior to my grandmother dying, we were working middle class, right? But the day that she passed away, all that working middle class went away. I was abjectly poor, right? And so, I lived with my uncles. My uncles were in the streets, and so it was only a matter of time before the family business became my own business, right?
Where did you
And
grow up at?
so, I grew up in Covington, Louisiana, about 24 miles outside of New Orleans.
Okay.
For those that are listening that are from Louisiana, I grew up on the North Shore, and so, man, it was. I was really good at sports. Like I was an athlete, right? I was a scholar athlete. I was always smart in school, but sometimes you use your intelligence for the wrong reasons, right? So it was only a matter of time before I start doing nefarious acts. Like I started selling drugs about 13, 14.
Right.
And I was pretty good at it. Right?
Mhm.
Based off of feedback that I get from my peer group nowadays, I did pretty well. But I think the thing for me was like when I saw folks coming into basketball practice and they had Jordans on and I didn't have Jordans on, I was like, man, what can I do in order to like do this? And like the thought process for me then wasn't I need to work hard for this. The thought process was I need to get this quick because I want to be like them, right? And so I didn't put as much thought into making those decisions. And so one day I call myself being super slick. I'm in the gym and about to make a transaction from a cat, and my basketball coach he saw me doing it, right. And so my thinking was when he pulled me to the side was that because he's a black man, I'm a young black male. I'm thinking I'm going to give him what I was about to serve this kid, and he's gonna take it, and he's gonna and have a good talk with me or whatever, and I'm gonna be on a better path, right? That's not what happened. He was in a principal trainee program, and him turning me in kind of changed his career, right? So he had to think to himself, and I'm not putting words in his mouth or putting ideas in into the atmosphere, but him turning me in the next year, he was an assistant principal, right? And so I'm sure that changed the trajectory of his life the same way that it changed the trajectory of mine.
Right.
And so my mom was like, nah, you're not going to prison. This is Louisiana, and things don't really work for us the way that they need to work for us down there. So you need to come to New York. So I ended up coming doing my junior and senior year in Monticello, New York. And so I go from being all world basketball player, probably on my way to Tulane or LSU, to being the first person coming off the bench in my junior year. I'm just like, man, that's humbling right there, bro.
Right. Right.
That's humbling. And so I got through it, ended up going to Albany to hoop. After my freshman year, decided that I didn't want to play ball anymore. I'm thinking in terms of how Dartmouth just unionized, we probably should have unionized at Albany, because because the expectations of, and the expectations of a college athlete just doesn't
Like
align.
full-time job.
It doesn't necessarily align with your scholarly just access to like being scholarly, right? And so just trying to like mesh those things. I think college was a really good experience for me to some degree until I pledged. I pledged my senior year, which made me have 2 senior years, not because of the brothers, but because of me, right? Because of my immaturity and my inability to be able to deal with the things that I needed to deal with being in a fraternity, right?
Right.
And so it took me a couple years in order to grow into my maturity and be who I wanted to be as an Omega man. Ended up transferring to Stony Brook and finishing up there. Did a master's degree, and then what drove me into teaching, bruh, is that I was substitute teaching at this highly resourced school on Long Island, and I'm like, damn, if I had all of this growing up, like there's
Right.
no way that I wouldn't have been more successful. I probably would have went to Yale or one of those kind of schools or whatever, right? So I got an email. I got an email from this bruh, and it was like a free master's degree at Morgan State University with a job in Baltimore. I ain't nothing about Baltimore. I ain't know nothing about Morgan State, man. I went down. I went to the job fair. They hired me on the spot. They were like, "You're a black man. You look like you can control the kid, right?"
Right. They want you to
And
manage
so,
and be the whooping boy.
yes, yeah. And so, based off of that, man, I started my teaching career. But one thing that I will say is that the way those black professors at Morgan State University poured into me, it molded me into the educator that I wanted to be, and molded me into the educators that raised me coming up, right? Like those people that poured into me in Sunday school, all of my black teachers that I wrote about in my dedication page in my dissertation. Like it just made me into who I wanted to be as an educator. And so, with tragedy comes triumph, right? And so, although my upbringing wasn't as great as I would have wanted it to be, it allowed me to have some character. It allowed me to be able to reflect in terms of who I want to be as a father, right? Because I feel like I say this, and I'm sure you say this as well. Every parent wants better for their kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so me knowing and having these tragedies and this trauma allows me to put myself in a space and place to where I won't allow for that to happen to the kids that I service or my own kids.
What was that major turning point for you? And was it a person? Was it a thing? What made you realize that you had to do things differently if you were going to live, be successful, whatever that might be?
Bro, I think it was I spent a couple of nights in Albany County. And
What was that like?
Bro, it
For the
wasn't
people out there listening, what's the process when you let's talk about that. Let's explore this for a minute. So you
well,
something happened. whatever it was.
Yeah,
You could tell or not
yeah,
tell.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Something happened.
something happened,
And
and then what?
yeah, and then I was arrested
What did that feel
based off
like?
TV.
Do you remember
So,
what that
bruh,
felt like?
so that wasn't the first time that I was arrested, but it was the first time that I had stayed overnight and that I had a bail and that I had to like somebody had to come and like get me out. That wasn't like me signing out on my own recognizance or my mom coming to get me or something like that, right? This was like, yo, there's a bail amount. Like you're in front of a judge and like this judge is gonna determine like what life is gonna be like for you or whatnot
Do,
based off of a decision or indecision.
do you remember what you were thinking when they put the cuffs on you?
I was man, so I had all kinds of things that were racing in my head when that happened. And the majority of the things that were happening was like, damn, man, I can't believe that I made this mistake, right? Like I was just beating myself up about like, damn, I can't believe that I let this get to the point to where I'm being arrested for it, right? Because there's so many things that I could have done or so many ways that I could have prevented it, right? Like I just was not in a good space. I was in a real dark place at that time. And I think after it occurred, I was even in a darker space, bro, because like, now you gotta if you're not in tune with the justice system, it's like you can't go into court with a public defender, especially if you feel like you got like you have something in front of you that you need to work hard at or that you can be successful for, right? I think a lot of people don't really understand that investment in that paid attorney, the right paid attorney, because not just any paid attorney, but the right paid attorney that is going to go in and advocate for you, the right paid attorney that has relationship with judges in the court or whatever, right? And so what I did ended up getting ACD, right? So that's like a conditional discharge. And so I just needed to stay out of trouble for a year in order for it to be erased from my record. And I was able to do that because listen, the day I got out, bruh, I never looked at crime again. Like I
Yeah.
never looked at crime again, bro. Like I think I might have spent 72 hours doing push-ups. I didn't sleep. Because you're in a processing. I was in a processing cell prior to even going into general population or anything like that. So I never made it to general population, and I'm sure I would have been fine regardless of whatever the outcome and whatnot. But I just thank God, bro, that I was able to open my eyes and see the error of my ways in order to make the changes that I need to make. And listen, for those of us that have passed, right? Like people still try to like pull that stuff up and whatnot and try to make you be what your past is, but you are not your past, and if you were able to get through it, and you were able to get to greatness, you need to embrace that greatness.
And that's what's important here is you're not your past, and the moment in time doesn't define your entire life. And so our brothers need to understand that. But why do you think so many of our brothers are stuck? They're stuck in this mentality where they are excited about, glorify, and a part of. And even though a lot of times, like you knew whatever you did when you did it, even though you did it anyways, right? You knew it wasn't probably the right thing to be doing,
Of
but it
course.
didn't matter until you got caught. And then when you got caught, you really knew that it wasn't the right thing. But then even more, you had a choice or opportunity, thank God, that it wasn't something that was, life altering with finality, right? But it altered your life in a better way because you decided, I'm not going to do this anymore. When a lot of our brothers, they would have got off and with the ACD and said, you know what? Oh, I got my hand smacked. It ain't nothing. It ain't no big deal. And go back out there and do the same things they were doing. Why do you think so many of our brothers are stuck? And what's your
Man,
thought process, man?
so that's a really good question, bro, and I thank you for asking. Growing up with folks that continuously have made the same mistakes over and over again, bro. I think first of all, I don't think prison works, right? Like when people make this make this gesture that prisons are to reform, I don't think that a prison is going to reform anyone.
No, it's been
I
the
think
cage.
right.
It's a
I think
system
that
that's
we're
actually designed, I believe, to create more criminals and create, keep us.
better, better,
Yeah,
better criminals,
there you go,
right? Because
and
when you're,
keep us
because
out
when you're in
of
there,
certain
one,
abilities because they want us as a population not to have the opportunity to succeed because at the end of the day it's threatening, and so it's easier to keep and create these jails and systems, and it's our job as brothers to know that and to stay away from it and to do something
Of course.
different instead of continue doing the same damn thing, because we're feeding into the system the way it was designed to hold us and keep us with that slave mentality. And so it definitely bothers me when brothers are stuck. But as you were saying, because I could go on, uh,
Of course, of course. So I think so. I think that there's some family expectations that we never talk about, right? So like I got a couple partners that are hustlers, right? And their based off their connection to the streets, they make money, and based off of making that money, they now have become the breadwinners for their family, right? So like their cousins, their aunts, their nieces, their everybody, their whole family, right? And so their whole family is dependent upon the success that they have with the streets, right? And so like a lot of them have that pressure on them to where it's like, man, I really want to stop hustling, but if I stop hustling, then I'm not going to be able to feed all these people that are now being fed by that, right? And I think for me and for you, for people that know better, right? Like the same things that you're doing in order to have a profitable illegal business are the same efforts that you can put into getting an MBA and having a profitable business,
right.
right? Without anybody coming to ever touch you based off of anything that you've done wrong, because you're not doing it wrong, you're doing it right now. And I don't think that a lot of people that have had success in the streets understand the genius that comes behind that, right? And
Right.
I don't think that we speak life into folks and whatnot enough to where they could understand, like, bro, if you did this legally, you could do this, this, and this. We never talk about that.
Right, and that they have all these attributes and they have these worked on acquired skills that could be utilized to be monetized. And
Of
so at
course.
the end of the day, it's usually about shifting their mindsets and seeing something different. But a lot of times in the world that we come from, it becomes, well, that's not keeping it real. That's not gangster enough. That's not, you think about it, and they don't see it that way and don't feel like they have the ability or think they can do that. But I think that's a lot of the times why I try to do this show. But I also, with the new book that's coming out, From the Gutter to Greatness, I have a 21-day challenge that I am actually going to be giving and working specifically with all people, but specifically us, right? Black men, to have us work through some of those things that we don't believe, that we don't think we're good enough, we don't think we deserve. What happened? What trauma held us back? And how do we heal from it? And how do we put ourselves in a new mindset so we could achieve? And that's really what it's about to me, is how do we change that? And so what you said, that process or that experience of jail. So what about that made you want to change your mindset, and how did it start to shift?
Bro, it's like, man, I having to explain that situation to people that love me, to people that like poured into me, right? Like it was some of the most embarrassing. It was one of the most embarrassing things that ever happened to me in my life. And so having to explain that was very humbling, right? Like you now have to tell your mom like what you did, right? And knowing that there's going to be this cast of judgment in terms of your actions, right? And so, for me, I just felt like, man, I need to be in control over my actions. And so if I'm going to be in control over my actions, there's certain things that I need to do in certain ways that I need to present myself. Then also, just like the frat, man, like I think we don't talk about this enough. And there was a documentary from a Gamma chapter, bro, about just like the toxicity that exists in our fraternity. Shame for me for saying it, but I'm gonna name it.
Speak
Uh,
it, please.
yeah, because I feel like sometimes the undue pressure of being a toxic male sometimes make you make choices that you shouldn't necessarily make, right? So I think taking a step back and kind of analyzing like how I'm perceived, how I want to be perceived, and then making the right calculations in terms of how I want to be perceived. I think that helped me a great deal. When you're young, you make a lot of mistakes, man. You do a lot of things, and like a lot of wrongs that are committed, right? And so for me, I think once I became of age, it's like, man, I know I can't go back and right all of these wrongs, but I know that I can live my life in a way in which if anybody comes and taps in right now, they could be like, damn, he changed from how he was then, right?
Is there, if you were going to tell us, like a grimy, gritty gutter tale of where there a time that you were ever afraid of your life for your life, or you're afraid that, and it might not have been violence, could have been something else, but it could have been anything. Were you ever afraid for your life? What was that time? Because I really want people to be able to identify and see themselves, because there's people who have went through something similar.
Yeah. So man, I was about 17 years old, and me and my buddies, my crew, we were walking to the mobile station. The Monticello Qs, they gonna know exactly what I'm talking about when I say this. So we walking to the mobile station, and Monticello is one of those towns to where it's like people migrate from all over that are probably in trouble in other places, but end up in Monticello. Like so, between Monticello and Fallsburg, you get everybody that has a felony from the city. You got everybody that has a felony from down south. They migrate up and they end up in Monticello for some reason. And so it was this crew of cats that had came up from Alabama, and like I felt like the rest of the town was kind of scared of them, right? Like, but I grew up in the South, so it's like I knew the mannerisms, I knew how they was moving, and I was like, nah, they don't scare me. And so this one cat, I had hit him with a foreign object. If we watching pro wrestling, I, I hit him with a foreign object, and it knocked him out. I got arrested for assault. Again, the system worked with me in another instance, right? But the thought of that retaliation that could have, because they were hustling, they were doing whatever, and they all, if they were able to leave a felonious past in a state, then they probably brought weapons and all kind of things with them as they came up north, right? And so there was always the fear of retaliation, like, man, you knock this dude out, they're gonna get you back or whatever, right? And so I was living with that fear. So as I was like walking to work and like walking home, when I always was like looking over my back, whatever. But I had this buddy, God bless his soul. He ended up passing away. He was in a shootout with cops. His name was Charles Brickhouse. He negotiated a fair one, right?
Right.
He negotiated a fair one with the cats from Alabama, and so I ended up getting to beat this dude up twice, based off based off of Charles and his negotiation. But after that, everything was settled, and we was all good, and I was able to walk without looking over my back. But that's just one instance, man. Those are the things that we go through on a daily basis. But hindsight is 2020. If I'm thinking about that now, I'm thinking about, man, how can we talk this out?
Right. It's a whole nother level as you get older, and
Yeah.
it's more about how do we resolve it? How do we? And again, there's some things you can't walk away from, but most of the things you can walk away from and you can run
Yeah.
away from, because it's just like, hey, we're not trying to live that life anymore. But it comes with age and maturity, or you also, I think about that, and for me, like, I'm a legal gun concealed carrier, right? And I definitely don't want to have to utilize that opportunity. I want to do everything I can to avoid that. So I'm going to do everything that I can to walk away from it. But I also carry that because at this age, I don't want to engage. I don't want to engage anymore. Not that I
Yeah.
can't, but I don't want to. So just going about your business. I'm gonna walk away, and I'm gonna try to do everything I can to avoid it, so it doesn't. I don't end up on somebody's newspaper, and end up having to claim self-defense. So let's stay away from it. And sometimes, it's about our egos. Sometimes that's about our egos, and as you get older, it's easier to give away that ego, I think. But I
Yeah.
think for our younger brothers, it's finding it sooner to realize that the ego isn't always necessary, and it's not always important, and the ego can get you in trouble because you don't have to prove something to everybody you encounter and deal with. But
Bro, post my 30s and 40s, I have never said I'm sorry so much.
yeah,
Like, yo, listen,
it's actually
if I if
freeing.
I if I if I offend somebody, man, I'm the first person to be like, yo, I'm sorry. I'm the first person to reflect on how my actions may be perceived by somebody else and whatnot, right? Because like, I'm always thinking about that now. But I think prior to coming into that way of being, I didn't give a shit. I didn't care. Like, it was
Right.
just like, yo, if I offend you, I offend you. That's tough. You need to deal with it, like that kind of thing. But like, I feel like once you get on your grown man ish, man, it's really easy for you to display the things you need to display in terms of like how are you modeling, what behaviors are you modeling for the youth coming up, right? And so, you know, for us, when we think about like the amount of fights that are in school, fights that happen based off of social media, phone, whatever, right? I also got to put myself in their shoes. I wasn't necessarily not fighting, right? But it's like, how do I now have a conversation with them based off of my experiences to let them know that there's a better way, for you not to have to fight, or you not have to defend yourself.
And some of the hardest part is getting their parents to understand that too,
Oh
because
boy.
so some of it is hard because the parents are stuck in a certain mindset based off of sometimes necessity, but trying to get them to elevate. And I definitely believe if you knew better, you do better. And
Of course.
and when you start to become educated yourself, and you start to have more to lose, and you start to just expand your mind, there's usually other ways to handle things. And that doesn't mean that you want to lose your respect or be a punk. It just means there's a different way to use your brain instead of doing it through physical violence, because as a people, we're always taught to be physically strong, but there's too many of us that are mentally weak. And so
Of course.
a lot of this to me is about how do we reverse that and determine to become more mentally tough, and use that at an earlier age. Because honestly, man, if there's people out there listening and they can start to reverse the curse and start to become mentally tougher and be able to push through and look for alternatives, they're going to omit and be able to evade so many of the obstacles that we faced, and that they can reach a level of success and greatness at an earlier age if they're willing to hear what we're saying and realize that it's okay. It's okay to be okay. But
Yeah.
before they even get there, Ray, my question to you is, because part of it is, how do you, a lot of it we have and carry with us because of the hurt and trauma.
Of
Right?
course.
And so the hurt and
Yeah.
trauma causes us our defenses to go up. How did you start to heal from your hurt and trauma so that you could shift your mindset? And what did that look like?
Bruh. Wow. So I think, for me, it started with like a good cry, right? Like it started with like me having to reflect on my life and not being where I wanted to be. And then also, I think it started when I had my first daughter, man. And when I heard my first daughter, yo, it just put a whole new spin on just like my views on the world, right? It's like I wouldn't ever want her to encounter someone that behaved and acted the way that I acted at certain points in my life. And so I think it kind of reformed me to be a better person. But I still wasn't there yet. I still had a whole lot of work to do. But by the time I had my second daughter, right, I think that it was just a metamorphosis in terms of who I needed to be, for both of them, right? And then with my son, it's like, I wanted him to have all the things and all of the support that I never had, and so I needed to be that person for him, right? And so like right now, he's on a pathway to become a teacher. He's an 18-year-old junior at an R1 university. He's doing his thing,
Oh,
and
wow.
he's not doing anything that we couldn't have done if we didn't have the right, if we had the right supports in place, right?
Well,
And
that's
so
huge.
I say that to not like take shots at my mom, I take shots at my people, but just knowing better and doing better. Like when you said that before, it resonated for me because my mom says that all the time. Like every time we talk, you know better, you do better. And so, so that really resonated for me, in terms of that, right? But like now I know. And so based off of that knowledge, I'm able to pour into my own kids. And then I'm also able to pour into the 900 other kids that are my kids too, right? And I think that when educators start taking ownership over the kids that they service and they start treating them like they're their own kids, it's a difference in terms of like what you're willing to allow and what you're not willing to allow
Mhm.
in their lives.
And for me, and I hear you say all that, because and it resonated with me because I know that I left a lot of things alone when I had my first daughter. My oldest is now 23, and so when I had her, it really changed my life. But like you said, there were still elements where my mindset hadn't changed, and what I figured out was my mindset didn't even start to shift, where I started making progressions toward, there was things I've always been working towards, and I've always had the mindset, especially on professionally, to do well, because I never wanted to go back to living how I was living and how I
Awesome.
grew up, right?
Yep.
But
Yep.
but personally, I kind of masked and covered up, and didn't show the difficulties that I went through, and didn't show the difficulties that I felt, or the feelings or the emotions that I felt, and I never healed, but it caused me more hurt and pain, on the consequence side, because things didn't work out. Like my first marriage didn't work out. That hurt my kids. That was upsetting. There was, it just, and even when I hold that emotion, you know what, there's got to be some type of outlet. So as men, you know what, sometimes we find a vice, and that vice isn't always healthy, right? And
Of
so
course. Yeah.
I found unhealthy vices, which often meant for me dealing with women. And so I've had to, in the last maybe 4 or 5 years, I've started to realize that it was about me really trying to search my soul. And I've done therapy too, but also
Yeah.
me trying to search my soul, and trying to do some of the inner work and self-reflection to work towards changing, so that interpersonal can match the outer professional, and so that I can also connect and heal, and work towards helping other people heal. And so doing that work has been extremely difficult, but extremely rewarding, because now it's giving me an opportunity and a platform to talk to others. And I'm still going through it, because I'm not perfect, and I still have my thoughts, and I have my weak moments of where, but I want to go back to certain feelings, certain thoughts, but because I'm more aware, I'm able to steer away from those things. And so
Of
it's a
course.
process, bro. And I hear that your kids were able to change that a lot for you. And I always think, for people who are listening out there, that they continue to work towards their healing, and starting as young as possible to work on their healing. you know um kind of just thinking about, what about your whole story makes it so much, why you go so hard for our parents. And I preface with that because you just spent 3 years of your life, or 7 years, or however long it took you to do your doctorate. Um so so you just spent all this time researching, and really engaging, to learn about parents and how to engage them. And you just spent a huge chunk of your life to dedicated to other people. So what about your story makes you want to do that?
Yeah, that's a good question, bro. I feel like you're extracting data, and you could probably transcribe this podcast here and write a journal. But so
Really?
I think, man, the horrible things that I saw growing up, in terms of how black men showed up for me, right? Especially in my family. I would have uncles who would take care of their stepkids better than they would take care of me, right? And so I always held on to that, in terms of like, man, like I'm your flesh and blood, like my mother is your sister, right? And like these people are of no relation to you in terms of blood, right? And yet, you going out and you willing to kill for these kids to have jabos and to have this and have, all the things that we didn't have, I didn't have growing up, right?
I didn't have that
And
either.
so,
I had
and
holes in
so,
my shoes.
and so my self-worth was, I always felt like, why wasn't I good enough for y'all to want to sacrifice for me and do the things that I needed for you to do for me, right? Like I always felt like I wasn't good enough. And so, I think that that's part of the reason why I wanted, because but then also, on the counter, I saw some really good people. Like I saw some really good married folks that were like in their kids' lives and making a difference and willing to go above and beyond, right? Not even just married, also single moms. I saw single moms doing it, killing it. I saw single dads killing it, being involved in their kids' life, even though they weren't with the person that they had the kid with and whatnot, right? And so based off of that, I'm just like, well, how can we kind of have a mesh and have parent voice, exude in the scholarship, right? Because the scholarship is scant. And then also, when we think about parent engagement, we often think about it based off of white middle class and how they engage in schools, right? So like you may have a hedge fund cat, and then his wife don't have to work because he out here killing it, right? And so now they can show up, they could be the school reader, they could show up to like back to school night and do all these things. And then there's this misconception that they love their kids more than the people that are not showing up to the back to school night. When
Right.
in fact, it is the adverse, right? It is the total opposite. Because if I got to go out and I got to damn near kill myself working 3 jobs in order to put food on the table, you cannot tell me that I don't love my kid. I'm only doing this for my kid, right? And I think that it was important for me to capture that in scholarship so that folks aren't out here talking crazy like black and brown folks don't love their kids, because they do.
Right. And so what did your findings, what were you able to determine from your research? What came out of it?
So my research, basically, the findings were that having a black male principal can mean a world of a difference for all kids, but particularly black and brown kids, because of our ability to go out and make connections with the community, our abilities to inspire, our abilities to kind of see the nuances and then tell our stories, similar to how you're telling your story from gutter to greatness, and how you allow me to tell my story today and speak life into these kids, right? Because again, when you look at the data on who's running these schools, it's not really us, right? And the majority of the folks that are in charter schools are mainly black and brown, but yet the leaders of those charter schools don't really identify with the constituents in which they service, right? And so me being able to look like them and pour into them makes the world of difference in terms of how they embrace me and how I embrace them.
And so, and how does it all play into dealing with parents and parent engagement, and you having the ability to connect with them differently because you look like them?
Yeah. So I think my research, it helped me twofold, right? So like I feel like because of who we are and how successful we've been in our careers, it aligns with like a white ways of racialized white ways of how they may view success, right? So like you'll be able to like chop it up with them because you went to the best institutions and they think you speak well, you're well spoken, whatever, right? And so I think it plays many different factors, right? Because now I can also it's kind of like being trilingual
Hmm.
without actually knowing a language, right? It's like you're able to code switch and talk in the ways that make them feel comfortable about themselves. But then you're also able to have real conversations with parents that may not be on that same level. You're meeting parents where they are, right? And you're bringing them to where you need to be, where they need to be, or where you want them to be, right? But then also doing it with like respect and efficacy, um, understanding that you're trying to bring them to where you want them to be, but not with any kind of judgment, and also knowing that there's people that are in your family that are in the same positions or if not worse than those people, and so being able to handle them with care like they're your own family, it's a skill, it's a science, bruh. And so not everybody has that skill, and because some people don't have that skill, they look down upon these folks and they do things to these families as opposed to doing things with these families.
Right. No, I think definitely. I think it is a skill, and handling them with care. Out of everything uh, that you said, I think that is so prominent and needs to happen. And like it protrudes out that should be a huge theme of handling these families with care, because often they don't have a good academic experience because the systems
Yes.
that are there, because the systems that happen to them so for so many reasons, there's usually a lack of mistrust. So handling them with care and being able to identify and connect is a huge opportunity to get this work done. And I wish that more schools would take this opportunity to listen, to learn, to be able to reflect on this and make the connections, because I believe the relationships are the key. And your parents and your community, bringing them in to be a part of your school, uh, or your organization, for that matter, your district or whatever you have, can change the game. It can create an opportunity to create something that's long lasting that you couldn't even fathom or imagine. So, it sounds like you came up with some really interesting findings. Now, what are you going to do with it? So what's next? What you going to do with it? Is it just
So
you going to just put the plaque on the wall, or what you going to do with
no, not at
it?
all. So currently I'm in the final stages of edit on a book on parent engagement. So been working on that diligently for that. So that should be coming out in the fall. I'm also I'm coaching, right? So like similar to you, school leaders that are in need, or school leaders that are not arrogant in the
Oh,
sense that thinking that they know everything, and they
oh,
want
so
to
bad.
they want to have get some wisdom from folks that have been in the game, that got skin in the game, that have had success in the game, right?
God, it's so difficult, man, out here in these streets, because
Yeah.
there's so many educational leaders that don't want to talk about it, when that there's an opportunity for them to do some things. And one of the things, that the best thing that ever happened to me is my board had got me a mentor, and I actually shut
Mm.
up and listened to him. And I learned so much from this individual, and now it's about pouring into others. And like you said, but there's so many egos out there,
Oh
and
man.
they don't want to hear it, man, and especially not from you, or from
Yeah.
me.
Well, I feel like we could part two this because we gotta unpack why they don't want to hear it from us, right? Like I would think that you hearing it from me, a person that looks like you, is going to create a whole better and safer space than you hearing it from somebody that doesn't, right? Like just the amount of care that we're going to deliver this to you, like the amount of real talk that we'll be able to have, and then you'll be able to kind of unwind and kind of talk through some of the things that you're struggling with and whatnot, and not in a way that folks are judging you, but in a way in which, all right, like what can we do now in order to get better, kind of thing, right? And I don't think people realize that.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I have a bunch of different clients that I coach all over, but recently, some of the people that I've picked up, and that I've taken on, because some of my clients, I have the ones that pay, but the other people who are in a spot that just need support or mentoring, I do
Of
that for
course.
them too, because I
Yeah,
believe in giving back. And so, like
of course.
recently, a few people are just, they're mostly, they've been Black women, interestingly enough, where which I was surprised at, where they've reached out, and we've had some connections of trying to support them, and really open and willing to trying to shift and adjust. But my brothers out there, they're very, I don't know if they feel threatened, or as
I
if,
think I think that's what I think that's what it is, Brad. I think they definitely feel threatened.
but
But you shouldn't. Like it would be
no,
different if, yeah,
I
it
don't
would be
want
different
the
if,
job.
yo, that and I'm trying to help you keep your job.
I want to support you. I want to love you. I want to give you what was given to me, so that you could win and get results that exceed whatever I was able to do, because you learned it
Of course.
quicker than I learned it.
Yeah.
And that's how I approach it, and try
But
to.
I don't know. Honestly, man, and I'm bringing you on my podcast, so I'm telling you right now, right? We're
Cool.
part two in this, and so my question is, it becomes right, like, do you want to win?
And
So before I take on any new clients, bro, that's the first question that I ask. I'm like, do you want to win? Because if you don't want to win, it defeats the purpose for me to be coaching you, because I want to win. I'm a winner.
and that's my why. So my why is, and that's what I'm in love with. I'm in love with winning. So education, I like kids. I love kids. Even I like education. I love it. But I'm not in love with education. I'm not in love with kids. I'm in love with winning. Winning is sexy to me. Winning turns me on. Winning once makes me. If you said to me right now, let's go to the court, I want to outplay you. If you said, let's
Yeah, of
run
course.
butt naked in the snow, backwards, I want to run faster than you. If you said, let's go to the kitchen and cook a meal, I want my meal to be better than yours. if you say, let's start a school, I want my school to be better than yours, not because I want to see you fail, but because I want to win. So I want to win for our kids. And so I want people who are hungry, who want to win too. And I feel it. Like, that's my why. I'm passionate about it. Like, and that's, and I love it when people are passionate too. But so many people are in it for the wrong reasons and aren't connected to their why. So we could continue this talk. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you, so if you had to give me, in about 60 seconds left, if you had to give me like 3 things that that someone could do or take away to shift from their gutter to greatness, what would those 3 things be?
Listen more than you speak is the first thing. So the first thing will be listen more than you speak. The second thing is to build your capacity to retain information, meaning you should be reading at least 10 to 15 pages of information, new information every day. And 3, if you are not surrounded by people that you can learn from, then change your surroundings. So those will be the 3 things.
Okay, all good stuff. And as I close out, so I'm going to issue I'm going to put you on the spot again. So I'm about to issue a challenge, brother. So I have given some very some trusted individuals who have really climbed the ladder in their life, and some who are still working on it. But I am asking them to, if they're interested first, because it's got to be something they want to do, to take this 21-day challenge. And it's all about reflecting and healing and working on your inner self so you can be better. So what I would love to see happen is, if I have my druthers in my way here, is that my good brother decided to pilot it, take it on, do it for the next 21 days. And then what I would love to do is to actually come and dissect it and get back on and talk about it. And I'll share mine. I got sent home in kindergarten for saying, if you show me yours, I'll show you mine. So I've always been a little nasty, bro. But hey, if you share yours, if you share yours, I'll share mine as well. And maybe we could have this enriching dialogue about some of the thoughts that it put us through and some of the shifts. And it's nothing. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes a day of reflection. And it is, and you can share as much or as little, because it's really about your own personal journey. But I would love to say, now that you ain't doing nothing but sitting home because you done with your doctorate, so you sitting on home on the couch smelling your own farts and stuff. So at the end of the day, you got some time. But if you got some time, would you be interested in giving this a shot?
Yeah. Yeah.
Good stuff, brother. So I appreciate that. Thank you. When we're done here, I'm going to send it to you. And then I would love for, if you're comfortable, for us to get back on. And you would be the first person here that I would love to have this dialogue with, and talk about what journey it took you on and the thought process, and how can we support other brothers in this journey to moving and shifting from their gutter to greatness.
Let's do it.
All right, so that has been my brother here, as I always leave with a mindfulness minute, and that has been the episode with Dr. Ray Ankrum. I'll fight for you, but you got to fight for yourself. This brother has been fighting for a long time, fighting for himself to get better, stronger, faster, quicker. He wants to win, but he also wants to win for other people. He wants to win for his parents. He wants to win for his school, for his kids, and he wants to bring people along. And he's doing it through manhood, scholarship, perseverance, and uplift. Yes, I do know the cardinal principles, Ricky Smiley out there. So with all that being said, we're moving from our gutter to greatness. My brother's going to take this 21-day challenge, and he's going to work towards continuing to heal, continuing to grow, as I am doing myself. And we are going to continue to try to give back and pour back into others to try to change this world for a better place. So I want to thank you all for listening and being willing to move from your gutter to greatness. Until next time, let's move from our gutter to greatness. Let's be greater later.
That's it for today's episode. So head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to the show. One lucky listener that posts a review on iTunes will win a chance in the grand prize drawing for a $25,000 private epic VIP day with Dr. Miller himself. Be sure to head on over to guttertogreatness.com and pick up a free copy of Dr. Miller's gift. And join us on the next episode.